welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays. I am Mind Runner, and my guest at this time is...
Can you
she is
sorry.
one of my favorite people in all the interwebs. She produces awesome video and funny videos that talk about real ADHD, but also funny memes and funny pop culture references. She is one of my favorite wrestling fans with her husband Swank and her awesome kids. Her videos can be viewed everywhere in all 50 states, including North Carolina. She is not a Karen. She is Kitty. Famtastic. Yep, there you go.
Thank you.
Awesome. I had to for a fellow wrestling fan, but I
I appreciate that.
I gotta let everybody know again. I have to whenever I have a fellow wrestling fan on the Mental Health Podcast, I have to have this banner flow every now and then that this is not a wrestling podcast.
Right.
I cannot guarantee.
It might go in that direction, especially with me, because
Absolutely.
the mental health stuff going on here.
And I see you're representing the Dark Order. I understand Dark Order and Budge. Nice shirt.
I actually got invited in by John Silver.
Really?
Yes. Yes, and he filmed it right, I think it was just a few weeks before Brody, and so he talks about Brody in it, and it's wonderful and sad.
Yeah.
But yes, he asked me to join, so I'm an official member. I don't know what number, but...
Number 153. I don't know. Maybe you have to come up with your own number.
Yeah.
Well, Kitty, thank you so much for joining me today. There's so much for us to talk about. I want to dive in to your funny videos. Especially the video that got me paying attention to you initially was the Giancarlo Esposito Magneto video that you did, and that stuck with me for so long. But with mental health too, a lot of folks, we want to talk about. I think a lot of people have different understandings of what ADHD is, and how, and also like how to cope with that. And as an educator myself, there are a lot of kids that suffer from ADHD. Of course, I think even regular kids, expecting them to sit in a desk for 8 hours a day is kind of insane. But what are some, just wanted to first kind of dive right into what are some misconceptions some folks have, or what are some things that you've noticed that ADHD is versus what people may think it is, or what are some things that you deal with?
Well, a lot of people think that ADHD is distractibility, which there is an element to that, but they think that we can be sitting here and be like, oh, shiny, and like that, and also that we are constantly, bouncing around in our seats, and that we have all of this energy all the time, and that we're just literally hyper people. But while we have bouts of mania, a lot of us here and there, it's just not true. What it really is the inability to complete tasks in a timely fashion. Our time perception is all screwed up, like we have a hard time with that. And simple things like getting ready, or even getting ready for this podcast. I was filming about my executive dysfunction,
yes,
with focusing on actually the task at hand, because I'm so excited about it, but I kept getting distracted by this, that, and the other thing. But we're not that way because we're trying to be distracting to people or annoying. It's just that literally our brain is always on, and it's always going, and there's always thoughts in there running around and around and around, and it's hard to focus. And it's also hard sometimes to just get up and go. You just get stuck.
Do you feel like sometimes it's almost like, instead of it, like when you see something, you think there's like you're almost overloaded with thoughts, to the point where it's almost paralyzing?
And it can be. There is a condition, ADHD paralysis, that if somebody from the outside looking inside, it will look like laziness. But that is when someone with ADHD is so overwhelmed by their thoughts or the things they have to do, no matter how simple it may seem, that they'll just literally sit back and just stare off into space, and we go somewhere else. And whether it's the negative thoughts or we're going to our happy place, it's just our way of coping.
Absolutely. In fact, I've had students. There was one student in particular that really stood out to me. This was like my third or fourth year teaching, and it was third grade. And he was one, and a lot of teachers that he had before, they wrote him off as kind of like they weren't sure if he was autistic or if they were really really shy, but he was brilliant. And when like you'd ask him a question, he would stand there like this and go like this, and his eyes were moving, and I noticed it was more like he was processing so much. And after
Mm-hmm.
just one-on-one talking with him and just kind of getting to know him, it was like where most people, you ask them a question, they'll think maybe two or three possible responses, like you're playing Mass Effect or a video game where it's like you have a menu choice of two or three options. With him, he's got like 20 right all at once that he
Mm-hmm.
could go down, and he's thinking this and this and this. And I think I think sometimes we write off people as being slow or, like you said, lazy, when reality is they're overloaded.
Mm-hmm. And here's a common thing about conversation with somebody who has ADHD that is really, really important for people to know. And this is something, and now I take my medication every day, and it helps with a lot of things. But when you're talking to somebody, you might tell them something, and for me, my response back will be a completely different topic, because in here, I'm thinking up a response, but I have my next thing already loaded and ready to go to say to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I finish that thought, I will go back to the question or whatever you said and then comment on it.
Yeah.
Like my husband will be like, I had a really great day today. And I'll be like, oh, so I went outside and looked at the flowers today and, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll say, I'm really glad to know you had a good day. It's just one of those weird quirks that most of us have. And it seems rude, but we're really just processing what you just said to us while other words come out.
It's like it's in the queue, but like there's other things already loaded in the queue that have to get out before that
Mm-hmm.
gets there. It sounds like Swank is very understanding, which I think
Mm-hmm.
it takes people to be very understanding. How do you and your household manage the ADHD? And it sounds like you're doing fantastic, and I'm loving the videos that you're doing, because I'm sure they're helpful for anybody that is also suffering from it.
I hope that they are. Yeah, for a long time, it was a really, really big struggle because, I stay home with the kids, and well, right now it's just my 4-year-old, and it can get very repetitious and repetitive and boring, which is very hard for someone with ADHD. So last year, I started a vlog, and for 6 months, every day of the week, Monday through Friday, was filming this vlog about what it was like to be a stay-at-home mom. And that actually really, really helped me. It helped me with my symptoms, and it helped me stay focused. But unfortunately, another thing that happens with ADHD is I was so hyper-focused on it. One day I woke up and I said, done with that. And I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And so I'm a creative person, so I try to manage if I'm feeling overstimulated or overwhelmed. I usually turn to music. I'll listen to it. I'll play some piano. I take medicine and I see my doctor and make sure that my symptoms are as managed as possible. But medicine's a band-aid. As well, it's more than a band-aid, but it's the medicine is very helpful for a lot of symptoms, but it doesn't take care of all of them.
It's not a
So,
cure-all. Yeah, it's not like a. It's not like the only solution. There's other
right.
things you have to. Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of work you have to do if you want to try and have a somewhat normal life. So, which I do, but it's taken me 14 years to really get where I am.
And
That's how long I've been diagnosed.
and before your diagnosis, I mean, you were probably suffering from it and then didn't know that you had ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that like when like in school and dealing with relationships and friends and like adults when you're a kid? Did you kind of know that it was something like that, or did people treat you different because of the condition?
Well, so I am what is known as a people pleaser.
Hmm.
A lot of people with ADHD have it. You too. You
Yeah.
understand.
Yes.
So, I was able to do really well in school only because I had this, and it came from nowhere. Just this really deep fear of disappointing people
Hmm.
and letting them down. And to this day, that's still really hard for me. So I would always make sure like I had my assignments done, and I would just focus really, really hard on the schoolwork.
Hmm.
But my friends growing up, they thought I was the weirdest person because I wanted to play games that were like, let's make up a song as we go along, or um, let's record this radio show on my Talk Boy. Remember that thing?
Yeah.
Um, and I wanted to do all these weird, creative things that weren't typical for a lot of kids in like the 90s. And I mean, I had a couple really good friends, and but it wasn't until I would say my senior year of high school when I met my best friend, who still is, and we are two peas. We have the exact same ADHD, and so I found one of my soulmates there who really helped me get through. Um,
Awesome.
but I did annoy the adults in my life a lot. I know that they
Maybe they deserved it. I don't know.
some of them maybe, a lot of them
Yeah.
were pretty good, but
Yeah.
yeah, I always had questions, 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 questions. Needed to know everything.
Like, tell me more, tell me more. Why the sky? Why is
Yeah.
the sky blue? Let's look at that. Well, it's something interesting that you've said that I've wondered both as an educator, but also in chatting with so many guests. Is I feel like sometimes there might be a correlation between certain neurodivergence verse and like gifted, like creativity. Because I mean,
Hmm.
let's face it, Van Gogh cut his ear off. So
Yeah. Yeah.
this is long before people were talking about a lot of stuff. And I noticed that, and I wonder if a lot of it is when if you're gifted in a certain way, and I believe that there's not just one gifted classification. Like you could be gifted in music, you could be gifted in art, drawing, what have you. You could be
Hmm.
gifted in like mechanics. I had a buddy of mine that was doing terrible in school, but he could tell you exactly what's wrong with your car just by the sound it's making.
Hmm.
You could just go, all right, this is what you got to do, boom, 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 boom. But he had to go back and get his GED because he dropped out of high school. And I wonder if there is a lot to that, where like if you like a lot of people when they're developing as children, they see the world differently, so
Hmm.
they grow differently, not less or more, but like some maturity may take longer, some may advance quicker, and they might see, and it might, and I think it's something something we need to remember for everybody, as we're all human and we're doing the best we can. But I feel like there's a lot of misunderstandings that not everybody's going to see things the same, and not everybody grows the same way. You know what I
Right.
mean? Do you
That's
see
for
that?
sure.
Do you see that? Like, because you're talking about these games that you wanted to play, they sounded a lot more creative, inspiring. And
Hmm.
I remember, bless this kid. Um, one of I taught the gifted cluster for several years, and there was this one child who he wanted to play this. He invented this new game to play at recess, and he was excited. and he was trying to get kids to play with him, and he was upset and because nobody wanted to play with him. And I went over to him and I said, "Explain the game to me." And he starts going on and he starts explaining this super complicated game that's
The cones
involving.
of Dunshire.
Yes, exactly. It was like, it's called Lucky Charms, and you had to get this rock, and you had to put this rock with this stick, and you had to go over here to talk to this person, and like 5 minutes in, I'm finally like, okay, wait a minute, like I think I know what the problem is, because most of the other kids, let's go play football,
Right.
or let's go play tag. That was the extent of what they wanted to do, and it would have taken the full recess session for him to explain this game to the other kids, and so I did talk to him, but again, I didn't want to extinguish his creativity. So
Right.
is that kind of what you're saying too? Is that kind of the feeling you see sometimes?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. A lot less these days.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, yeah, when I was growing up, it I didn't meet too many other kids who were into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Sort of like you were saying, they just wanted to play all the regular, let's go play hide and seek. And uh, my best friend as a child, really, um, she hung in there a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also not always easy for her because with ADHD also comes other sensitivities. Like I have always had a condition called misophonia, which is becoming more well known now, but it is, I think it translates to the hatred of sound, which is a little harsh because um, I don't hate sound, but there are sounds that I hate. And
Yeah.
so I'm musically inclined. So things like my poor best friend when we were growing up, if she was ever singing along to music and she didn't have the greatest singing voice, which should not matter, it would make me insane. But then she would try lip syncing, and the sound of her lip syncing would drive me insane. So,
just the just
so
the
I would
sound
just,
of the mouth. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, in adulthood, I've gotten a better handle on the misophonia, and I know like what triggers me, and I can wear earplugs. But like, it's a real, yeah, it was a real problem when I was a kid, and so she hung in there with those games, and my don't sing, that's tough. That's tough for a kid, It's
Yeah.
tough for a kid to have your friend tell you that.
I'll try not to sing for you then today. I don't want to.
It's
I
not
don't.
so bad now,
Yeah.
but back then, my
I.
son though, he has it too. Like I don't know that he's ADHD, but he has perfect pitch. And
Mhm.
see here, I'm going off on a tangent, and that's what happens a lot too. Um, but
But
he does.
this.
He has perfect pitch, and he can't stand when things aren't in tune or if they don't. But he also expects like all his buddies are going to be able to play music like him, and he's
Yes.
10, and he's got a special gift there. But we're keeping an eye just in case.
Oh, that's awesome, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of gifted people have to grow to learn is that not everybody's like is as gifted as you. Like you might like in some cases it's kind of like the Matt Damon Goodwill Hunting. It's like this is easy for me, like he could just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas most people struggle. Like I'll see somebody that is an incredible artist will draw this masterpiece, and I look like I'm drawing Charlie Brown. Whereas this person's drawing this epic thing, and I think that sometimes is lost on folks when they like, why can't you sing perfect pitch? I can do it easy, and they
Mm-hmm.
miss that. Or it takes a while to realize, oh, this person isn't as inclined as I am.
Mm-hmm. I've been trying to teach him that too, and he understands a little bit, but he also is going around teaching all his friends how to play guitar and stuff, which
Yeah.
is it's amazing. Um, but still, it's different. It's different from what other kids are doing. Other kids are out playing basketball or, other sports or hanging out playing video games. I can't get him to play a video game, which I love video games.
Mm-hmm.
I can super hyper focus on those things and just go all day.
Tell
But
me about hyper focus, because I think that's another thing that sometimes people don't realize goes with ADHD. Like, uh, when someone is hyper focused on something, like I had a student that when we would leave for lunch, she's reading a book, and we had to
Mm-hmm.
literally shake her to say, "Hey, we're going to lunch," because she's not with us. She's in the world that book is that she's reading about.
Yes, that is something that is both pleasurable and horrible depending on what the focus is. So, um, when I'm hyper focused on something I like, let's say I'm editing content, which I absolutely love everything about filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm editing, I am sitting there and I'm working, and I swear to you, the world could be falling down around me and I wouldn't notice. I wouldn't hear it. You just get so into what you're doing. It's almost like another level of consciousness. You
Yeah,
just go somewhere else, almost like dreaming, but while you're awake.
yeah,
And it's very, very difficult to stop when you are in the middle, whether it's good or bad. It can be very upsetting. And if I'm in the middle of a hyper focus, and we'll stick with the film editing, and I have to stop and put put the software down, whatever, I am still there in my mind thinking about it. So I can be around people, but if you're talking to me, if I'm responding to you, it's on autopilot, and things go in one ear out the other, and I'm so distracted, and it can be really frustrating.
like you're in the kitchen cooking dinner, but part of your brain is still sitting at that chair doing the editing. You're thinking
Yes.
about, oh, I'm next thing I'm going to do is this.
Yep, and it can be problematic too, because if you're doing something like cooking, it's easy to make mistakes.
It's like, oh, whoa,
Um,
the kitchen's on fire, Mom.
yeah.
Sure. Let me 1 second. Let me add this music to
Yes.
the.
Yes. Oh wait, hold on. I gotta do this real quick. Yeah. Exactly. And then on the flip side, when it's negative, I did a video about this too, about I haven't done one about positive hyperfocus, but oh, and the dopamine, by the way, the dopamine flow that you get during a positive hyperfocus is incredible. So you just keep going; it feels good, but you also might not eat or do things that you need to do. So it's good to have, if you have someone you live with or a friend who can kind of come get you out of it a little bit, even just get you up and moving. Um, but the negative hyper focus is like, I got to do this now, or else. Like for me, it's like I'm just gonna have anxiety and I might panic if I don't do this, and mania sets in, and hours will pass on a task, and then once it's done, I don't feel happy. I don't get that dopamine rush. Instead, I feel guilty or agitated or frustrated with myself because I feel like, did I just waste all that time? And so it can be, there's two sides to that coin.
Do you feel like when you get like that? Do you feel like the task you did, like you feel guilty? Like maybe I wasted my time when I should have been more productive elsewhere. Is that what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like
Yeah,
being
like,
more attentive to your kids, or more attentive to, or I should have washed the car instead of cutting this video, or something like that.
or like, it was beautiful outside, I should have gone for a walk,
Mm-hmm.
or especially, spent more time with Swank. Fortunately, those types of hyper focus don't happen to me too often. My medicine helps a lot with that. And I can usually feel it coming on. And if I catch it in time, I can usually redirect my focus onto something else, but it takes all my energy to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But,
And it sounds like Swank is, I mean, 10,000 stars to Swank
yeah.
for being so supportive. But I think it really does take an understanding partner to
Mm-hmm.
and you sound very lucky to have him. I'm lucky to have my goddess wife, Full Tilt Deb. She makes up for a lot of my challenges. And
Mm-hmm.
but it does seem like, and not just a partner, but it sounds like a lot more people, and we might be getting there the more we talk about this kind of stuff, not just for people that are suffering from ADHD, but people that know others that suffer from it. It's
Mm-hmm.
the more we know about ourselves. I mean, think about it. Was it less? It was less than 100 years ago they were doing lobotomies. And
Yeah.
they thought they were doing the right thing. And even before then, there was it leeches.
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
it really makes me wonder too in history, like how you know I hesitate to condemn people in the past for being quote unquote stupid, because they're not. I just think it's the more we learn, the more educated we become. But do you
Mm-hmm.
feel like today that because we're a lot more aware? Do you think do you think it's more common and more people are accepting of ADHD? Because I've heard the other side where some people think that there's too many people that are saying they're ADHD, and they blame like social media, they blame a lot of things on it. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, yeah, I think so. There's a lot of things that people with ADHD deal with that everyday people deal with too.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody gets overwhelmed sometimes. Everybody has trouble getting started doing a task sometimes. But the difference is that, for us, it's all the time. Um, I feel like there is a lot more acceptance and empathy for I don't even like to call them mental illness, because an illness is something that can be cured. It's more like mental conditions.
Yeah.
There's so much more information out there, and with social media, people are talking about it. But I think there is also a lot of self-diagnosis going on, and the best thing a person can do is, if they can, try and get diagnosed. For me, it was so easy. I mean, I had, to, make those phone calls and go to those appointments, but I wanted to get better. But it was literally a computer test to test my reaction time and whatever else. And they talked to me for a while, I think, to see if I could stay on topic. I don't really know. And then I just started seeing another doctor who was like, you have very, very severe ADHD. And that's when I started managing. But I worry for people who are self-diagnosing and trying to get medications wherever they can, because it's just so dangerous these days. And
Yeah.
I really implore people to, you know, call a psychiatrist's office and go in. They usually have someone there who can diagnose. And um, but I think you asked also, like, how are people receiving this?
Mm-hmm.
I think better now. I know through my videos that even my own family is learning things about me they didn't know, because a lot of my struggles have been internal.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided I was tired of that, and that the world should see what this looks like.
Yes.
And I'm
Absolutely.
still a functioning human, it's just a little harder sometimes.
I love that you said it too. That it's not an illness. It's just it's a condition. It's a variant. I don't even say variant. It's just a different thing. That
Mm-hmm.
okay. It would be the same as if I was born, without an arm. I would manage my life
Mm-hmm.
accordingly. I'm not any less of a human. I just would manage my life differently, or just in a doesn't not even that extreme. And I also like that you stress that people tend to self-diagnose and in a lot of things. And if I just self-diagnose myself, I would have everything.
Uh-huh.
I,
Oh
I,
yeah, me too. Me too. I mean, sometimes I just feel like I go off the rails, and that's dangerous. That's when don't go on Google.
WebMD is one of the worst things it's one of the best things, but also one of the worst things, because I'll have like I'll see something on my arm and I'll go on and it's like, do you have this? Well, yeah. Do you have that? Yeah. Next thing I know, I'm dying, and it's
Uh-huh.
and it's really just a spider bite or something. It's
Yep. And the thing is, like, for people like us, it starts spiraling
yeah.
in there, and then it starts turning into way more stress than we really need to worry about. And it's just how we're programmed. And it's frustrating, but also it's not always the worst thing in the world, you know? I think that we're really in touch with our feelings and with the feelings of others. And I
Yes.
think that's really important.
Talk a little more about that. How the positives though, like because it sounds like there's like you said, more in touch. You've mentioned hypersensitivity, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is also a positive component to a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen that manifest?
For me personally, I'm very perceptive of people. I I can generally tell. Um, I always get that gut feeling about a person. I can tell if there's goodness or not.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are pretty good. Um, I Something that was really positive for me was that I wanted to learn how to play the piano. Like a musical. I always wanted to learn how to play, and I've stuck with it for almost a year and a half, and I can play pretty well now. Um, and that is something I've been able to focus on, and it has produced something positive for me, which is great because now I can play with the kid I mentioned before,
Yeah.
who's a guitar guru.
Yep.
Um,
Uh-oh, family band.
yeah, yep, it's possible. The youngest one is showing interest too. So,
Kitty and the
um,
Fantastics. There we go.
here's one that is a double positive. So like I mentioned, my best friend, she has ADHD too, and she's going on a trip. And whenever this happens, I go to her house. Now, our ADHD is very similar, but we have different interests.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not much of a traveler, but I can pack anything. I can pack for any kind of trip any day, and I love it. And for her, it's a huge source of anxiety. Like and so I'm just like, let me come pack for you. And so we work together, we make lists. And so all of her stuff is in order. And at the end of the day, her suitcase is packed and ready to go, and everyone's happy.
Oh, that's good.
So that's a positive there too.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to be very empathetic. I mean, sometimes if you're in a bad mood, I might take on your bad mood sort of a thing. But when you have joy, the joy I feel for you is beyond measure, and it's genuine. So, I mean, I think those are some really positive things about it.
You can
That
definitely read the
just.
room when you walk into it, right? You feel
Mm-hmm.
it's almost yeah. And I think most humans to some degree can sense that, but I think when you're hypersensitive, you can walk into a room and you can sense if there's joy, or you can when you meet somebody, you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of get that undescribable extra sense that okay, this person is in a good mood or this person's hostile. What's going on with this
Mm-hmm.
person? I sometimes wonder, and that the movie Unbreakable got me thinking about this, and it's one of my silly hypotheses, and I'm sure there's
Okay.
people way smarter with paid way more than me that have degrees and all that, but the kind of the spectrum thing, where and I don't mean like autism, I'm talking like for every person that's hypersensitive, there's also probably people out there the opposite that struggle with understanding sensitivity like
Mm-hmm.
struggle with reading a room because I've known people that really struggle reading the room and they come off as obnoxious, but it's because they just don't have that sensitivity at all. And
Mm-hmm.
but I think there's also folks like I think you and I where we're almost hypersensitive to emotions, and and it's one of the things that helped me be an effective teacher is I could tell if that kid over there is not feeling it, what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And after the lesson, I pull him over and say, "Hey, what's going on?" And then I can kind of work with that. But yeah, I feel like that can be it can be a positive, but it's also something. It's with great power comes great
Yes.
responsibility. Thank you, Uncle Ben,
Yes.
or Aunt May. Um, but I feel like that it could be also a struggle to manage that beast too.
Yeah. I actually am especially attuned to people who are feeling anxious or uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's with ADHD people, you're either extroverted or you're introverted, and I clearly am an extrovert. Because I mean, introverts generally, I mean, I don't think bare their souls on camera. I don't really have a problem with it. I like to put myself out there, you know.
Yeah.
And I just totally forgot what your question was, because
No, and
that's part. See, that's part of what happens. I start jumping onto that. Could you repeat that for me? The
yeah,
last
well,
part.
I was more talking about like the positives and the negatives of having that being sensitive to it, where like
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, being hyper focus or hypersensitive to emotions, where you can it could be tough to manage as well.
yes. Yeah. I actually I am more sensitive to. I think I was starting that about people who have anxiety, who are feeling uncomfortable, and I um, I always end up trying to talk to those people and just let them know, I'm like, you good? Hey, if you need some air, you can go out, or there's room over there if you need some quiet. And it's just kind of discreet, because especially like at a social setting, there's people who go who do not want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And even with my excitement levels and liking to be around people, I do get to my limit and I gotta go. Um, but I am definitely more sensitive to the people around me. And if I'm not careful, I will take on the moods. That's for sure. I
Yeah,
can, and that is something I've been working on too. It's very difficult though, because it's
it
just
is.
kind of built in.
It's kind of like it's one of those things where and I felt this too, is I have to, my peer, the people I'm working with or the people I'm around have to be in a good mood for me to be in a good mood. It's weird, like, and it's almost to the point where I can't be in a good mood if somebody in the room with me is not.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. It's like, even if I have nothing to do with why they're in a bad mood and nothing to do with like anything they're going through, I have to somehow, I feel compelled. Like, I've got, in order for me to feel good, I can't just go, what's your problem? I can't. It's a struggle for me to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so as a people pleaser, if that's happening to me, I especially if it's someone I love and really care about,
Mm-hmm.
I will do whatever I can to try to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I want, and that kind of sounds selfish almost to say it like that. Um, but I truly want the people around me, and I want all people to be happy and to
Yeah.
feel content and joy. So if I can help someone feel that way, then I will.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it depends on if I'm in a mood. I can get really agitated. Then sometimes it's just forget about it, and I'll just be a grouch the rest of the day.
Do Do you think social media, and again, I always find that a lot more gets lost in text versus speaking. Like, a tweet can be taken many different ways, and
Mm-hmm.
like an email, but then there's also the whole troll factor. Oh, they're protected behind this wall. But also from a dopamine standpoint too, do you feel like social media in general, as it's evolved to where it is today, has it made ADHD more of a struggle? Has it been less of a struggle? Have you just been able to roll with it? How has that changed, or has that changed the way you manage ADHD at all?
Well, that's a really good question. I've definitely had my love hate relationship with social media. I was finding with Twitter that whenever I was on it, it was affecting my whole mood. Like I couldn't continue on there because I was getting depressed over it. And I'm like, this is social media. Um, and then one of my friends told me, you should use Instagram. You'd probably like it. And I started using it, and I
Mm-hmm.
find that it makes me feel really good because there's actually a lot of really great ADHD information on there. A little bit of misinformation, but most of it's pretty good,
Yeah.
and a lot of music and happy. And for me, social media I can use in moderation. I do know there's a lot of people with ADHD who do end up their ADHD paralysis ends up causing them to just scroll and scroll and scroll, and they just can't stop. And I I don't actually do that because if I'm staring at a screen too long, I get a headache. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
fortunate in that regard. But I'll space out and paralyze in other ways that are just as distracting. But as a whole, I think it depends on the platform. But some of them I think are really, really good for it. Um, Places like Instagram, TikTok, they allow for a lot of people who have ADHD or other neurodivergent conditions to either learn more about them or express themselves, which is really nice. And to me, that's been very therapeutic.
It seems
I
like it
love
feeds.
making my content. It
That's
makes
what I
me
was gonna
very
say.
happy.
It feeds that creative bug. I think a lot
Yes.
more. Like TikTok and Instagram, they seem to, and it's boom. It's here. It is upload. Boom. Doom. Put this on here. Boom. 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 Here's my content. And
Mm-hmm.
whereas Twitter, I think, Twitter, I think is a different environment. I think that's where people want to get in a fight. They want to get in a
Mm-hmm.
verbal argument. They want to dunk on each other, and or they want this. Like I notice a lot of folks, bless their hearts, because I mean nobody really knows what someone's really going through. I don't
That's
want
for
to
sure.
diminish anybody's struggle. I don't want to diminish anything, but I do feel like sometimes people get addicted to that dopamine of people liking their tweets. And I've even
Mm-hmm.
found it too. Like I'll put something I think is really funny and get no response. I'm like, this joke
What?
kills. Why isn't it getting any likes? And I have to step back and understand, one, there's an algorithm. Two, I don't know. Three, number two, people may not get it the way I do, and three,
Mm-hmm.
people may not even have seen it. But I feel like sometimes people get on there and they'll say something like, "Oh, I'm really depressed today. Can anybody out there cheer me up?" And I want to respond, but it's almost like they're fishing for dopamine. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And I almost feel that like it enables that kind of needy behavior. And do you feel
Not
like,
all of them are depressed either, I'll tell you, because me being who I am, I see a lot of those. Well, I would, because I'm no longer on Twitter, but I would see posts like that, and in the past would respond to some of them, and some of them were legit,
yeah,
and others were not. And so it was. It's just. It was a sad place. I
yeah,
felt like. So I couldn't take the negativity because it was impacting me too much. And I mean, I don't have a problem with people who want to use it because
mm-hmm,
there's a lot of, I mean, I do miss talking about wrestling all the time because I don't really talk about it much now. And that was one of my things. But um, I don't really have an interest in making wrestling videos right now, but
well,
the
we
focus
can
may change. Yes, put the
we
thing
can
back.
always talk. We can always talk about wrestling. Now, this is kind of
Yeah.
funny too, because I'm in the process of a third podcast, because I do this. I also do the Educators podcast. But my producer Nacho Man Shane and we're huge wrestling fans, and of course Full Tilt Deb. She popped last night with Kenny Omega. Oh, you're not caught up.
That's okay.
I just ruined it. I'm sorry,
No,
but
you didn't ruin anything. Don't worry about it.
let's just say
I see
the
I see spoilers, so but I didn't see the match yet, but that's okay.
but it's really cool. And Nakazawa and Cutler make you proud. They make you very proud.
They went against Mox and Claudio, didn't they?
Yeah, I'm not gonna tell
No.
you how it goes, but they'll make you proud.
Oh,
And what's
oh
great,
good.
the crowd was cheering for. They were going Nakazawa,
Nice.
da, da, da. And this one dude, like almost, it was like second from the front row, had this big Michael Nakazawa poster, and Cutler there
Nice.
cheering for Cutler, and it goes very well. Kenny will make an appearance. He has a great promo that he
Oh, I love
does.
him.
It's kind of like you made it personal, kind of promo, and it's
Oh
really
yeah,
great.
you go after those guys. I mean, you know what? Brandon Cutler really did Nakazawa bring out the baby oil?
No, no. In fact, that's
Um,
we
Bummer,
almost were we're almost complaining because we figured the baby oil would have really really like how would Mox respond to that?
right?
How would Claudio? What would have been funny is if Claudio tried to swing Nakazawa and he slips off
Oh
because
my
the
gosh,
baby
that's
oil.
probably why.
That would have been. I think that would have been funny, but
Yeah,
they're pretty. Nakazawa's pretty much in his new kind of persona, but it's like it's they both have this enough. We're standing up to the bullies, and they stand up to him, and you'll have to see how that turns out.
I
But
will.
it's the I felt like the whole episode like AEW is back to where I really have enjoyed every episode.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, you know, the thing about Mox is that no matter where they put him, he's gonna make it look good. He's he's always been my top guy. And him and Kenny, I just like can't I can't. I love them both so much.
Yep.
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 So
You and Full Tilt Deb are exactly in the same spot. It's like I think Kenny's her number one, but if it wasn't for Kenny, it would be Mox.
mhm.
And she we when they came to Norfolk twice, we got to see them in Norfolk, and the second time we had our seats were right on the edge by the where Mox comes out, from the back, and she got to see him warming up before his match. She was peeking
Oh,
around,
nice.
and when he came up into the stands with us, and we were all like, "Yeah, Mox!" It was really
It's
cool.
amazing.
I love that kind of stuff.
You know, it's cool because Daniel Garcia, Butcher, and the Blade are all from my local indies. So, like, when they showed up at AEW, and then especially, like, Daniel Garcia had been this horrible car accident, and, like, we didn't
Right.
know. And to see how well he especially is doing, it's like, I was just watching you in the indies, like, not that long ago, and it's just so mind blowing. And he's, like, blowing up as one of these big stars. It's it's a Buffalo pride, man.
It's funny, yeah. The buff and I love the Buffalo Kids apparel that he's got going
Mm-hmm.
on.
And
They
Allie's involved with that too.
I think it's kind of like it's the wrestling equivalent of I saw the band before they became big.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's kind of like I remember when you were at the indie show in North Carolina, and now you're or I remember seeing
Yep.
you first. And I love that because you get to see them blow up and become these big stars, and that's so cool.
And it feels good too, because you know how good they are.
Yes.
Although the Blade used to be Braxton Sutter was his name back in the Indies, but everybody else was the same. What was Butcher? Andy? I think he just Andy Williams there.
Yeah,
I don't
he may have
remember.
been Andy Williams. This was funny because Nacho Man Shane, who he comes over every Wednesday, and we all watch Dynamite together. And when Butcher and the Blade first started, he was watching. He goes, "Hey, that guy looks like Andy Williams from Every Time I Die." And he
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
looks, and then he goes, "Wait, is that?" And then he grabs his phone before I could tell him. He grabs his phone. He goes, "That's Andy Williams from Every Time I
Yeah.
Die." And then it became this big thing, and it just
It's
and
amazing.
then when Brody King joined too, he was
Mm-hmm.
Nacho Man Shane's a big God's Hate fan, and he saw Brody King, and then I think it was Colin Young helped Danhausen with the Ass Boy song.
Oh, okay.
And so there's all these wrestling and connections to mute, and it's funny watching people geek out over somebody they knew from maybe another spot.
Yeah, it's really cool how those worlds collide. But Williams was really putting in his time in the Indies. He was always there, and
He looks
massively
great,
huge.
but he looks in great shape right now too.
Yes,
He's
he does.
cut, and
Yes.
I like the look now that he's gone. He went full bald, but
Yeah.
he's still got the. And I love when he comes out with the pork chop in his hand, or he's eating some kind of meat. I think that's cool.
It's amazing to me. I love it. It's so cool, and it's just like because I didn't even think they'd come from your Indies. I'm like, who else are they gonna take?
Yeah,
Well,
right.
or not take because I'm happy for them. Who else are they gonna call up from there. I don't know. There's some really good talent there, so
I
yet to be seen.
I feel like we're in a wrestling renaissance right now because and I
Mm-hmm.
think social media has really helped in that regard. But women's wrestling is much more profound, and it's not the popcorn match. It's not just the bra and panties match, which
Thank
I
goodness
well, and I know,
for
and
now.
that drove me nuts. Now I come from I liked the original Glow wrestling when I was a little kid. Now
Mm-hmm.
because of the wrestlers, like because Ivory was Tina Ferrari, and my favorite wrestlers. I like the villains because my favorite wrestlers were Matilda the Hun. Bless her heart, she passed away. There was a tag team called Heavy Metal, which was Spike and Chainsaw, but there were also this other tag team called the Housewives. And what I didn't realize were the Housewives and Heavy Metal were the same two people. And
Oh.
but they were two different. Like they would dress up in this Heavy Metal outfit and go, yeah, we're gonna destroy you. And then they would go and put like mud masks on and put curlers in their hair and wear bathrobes, and they're like coming around playing these other people.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so funny.
It blew my mind because for years I didn't realize they're the same people. But what I loved about Glow was it wasn't like it was. They were wrestlers. They were still wrestlers. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they were female wrestlers, but it was they and it was they had some campy. They tried to do more like a laugh-in kind of like, so not Saturday Night Live, but kind of like they did a lot more skit stuff. But I felt
Mm-hmm.
like it was more the kind of wrestling I felt like female wrestling that I enjoyed. And then the Attitude Era, and it was like happened in WWE, and I felt like that they were missing a lot. I
That's one I was
Yeah,
like in those years too that my guy friends were watching it and I tried tuning in. I'm just like as a, um early teens, preteen and early teens that I was like, what is this? What is this garbage? And
yeah,
I couldn't, and it wasn't until, oh gosh, like 2012, 2013 that I started tuning in to WWE, and that's when I really started watching.
yeah. And what's interesting too is because prior to I call it the Braun Panty era, you had like the Fabulous Moolah, you had Wendy Richter, but even back then they weren't taken serious. They were like a gimmick rather
Mm-hmm.
than a showcase, and it really took a lot to really push women's wrestling. Like when they changed it from divas to a women's championship,
I
and
got to see, I was watching then
yeah,
too. And so I got to see, when Becky and Sasha, um, and Charlotte, when they all, and Bailey, they all
yeah,
came up and were just changed everything
and
after NXT. I mean, they did an NXT really, if we're being real,
yeah,
but,
but still,
um,
exactly.
the golden days of NXT way back when, so
but I
long ago now.
but I feel like there was that showed people there was an appetite for that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that should, and like now you see there's so many there's like Mission Pro Wrestling that Thunder Rosa and her husband's promotion. There's CCW Wrestling, which is
Mm-hmm.
you see all these women's wrestlers now that are just killing it, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times they're upstaging the men. I remember we went Deb and I went down to North Carolina. We went down to North we watched an indie show down there, and there was one women's match, but the women's match stole the show. They were doing they were tremendous. They were doing flips off the top, a turnbuckle, doing all this crazy stuff, like Young Bucks type stuff.
That's
And
awesome.
I could even see a couple of the wrestlers behind the curtain peeking around, going, "Man, we got to step up our game. We're getting shown up." And I feel like that, especially with women's wrestling, there's a renaissance, and I think in general, the indies are so much more popular. Like you can, instead of it just being you only get to see wrestling from your local town or what's on TV. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much available to you now. You can watch New Japan. You can watch all these other promotions.
It's awesome too. And the thing is, women have always been stellar athletes. Growing up, I loved watching like dance and cheer competitions on TV to see the sheer athleticism of these women.
Oh, yeah,
The way they could just throw each other so high in the air and catch each other and all the flips and everything. So I didn't understand why that didn't translate to women's wrestling until, you know, in the past decade, not even. I mean, within the past decade, I'd say it started really to where it is today.
Because
Pretty
if you think
awesome.
about it, it's like combat gymnastics. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah, it really is.
I used to call it combat Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
that's kind of the vibe I like to watch. And you know, I know there's a place for the Bryan Danielson matches and the, you know, the more the big beefy men slapping man meat matches. You know,
Wardlow and Samoa Joe.
exactly. Smack. And I enjoy it whenever there's a story. But I really enjoy, like, lately we've seen Commander and
Oh, I really like him. Is he? He's new. I mean, to AEW. I saw him a couple weeks ago, and
yeah,
I was just. Is that the guy who can run the ropes?
he can run across ropes. Now, up until that point, Ray
Yeah.
Phoenix was the only one that we saw that could do. Here, this dude is just like.
He's like acting like he's walking on land like normal. Like, how does he do that?
I feel like, how cool would it be if they had a ladder match with no ladders, but they put Commander, Dante Martin after his leg heals.
I know, poor Dante.
Ray Phoenix, all these high flyers where they have to get to the belts, but there's no ladders. They have to jump for it or something. I don't know if that'd be, or it'd be dangerous, but I mean, just the way they defy gravity.
Yeah, it's
I'm
insane.
sitting here, I'm sitting on the couch drinking my pop, going, I wish, boy, this guy is the same species as me, doing this crazy flip in the air. I'm like, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, I've been at a few shows. I went to a couple AEW shows too, and if you can get down near the apron, like for me, it's literally I am like a foot taller than the apron, and that is it. Like it is terrifying to me that to even jump down from the apron, I would ruin my knees and probably die. And they're just like jumping off the top turnbuckle and ladders, and I don't know how they do it. It's amazing.
Jumping off the barricade too. Like there a couple of times they'll prance up onto the barricade and do a backflip into the thing.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And this is why it's so entertaining for me. It holds my interest because it's always so like there's always so much going on that I can't look away.
Yeah.
I'm very seldom disappointed with an AEW show, man. They're so good.
It's fantastic. And anybody that's hating on AEW, you're just hating. Come on, let's be honest.
They have to watch it. They haven't watched it, you know?
Exactly. Well, I'm thinking, again, Nacho Man Shane and I have been talking about doing a wrestling podcast, and we've actually decided we're going to call it because there's not a whole lot of podcasts out there. You know, there's not very many people out there at all talking about wrestling. There's not a whole lot of dirt sheets at all. No sarcasm at all. But that's why we're going to call it another wrestling podcast. Like, because it's like, yes, here's another wrestling podcast out of the millions and millions of wrestling podcasts that are out there. But we'd love to have you join us.
That would be fun. I would love to do that. You know,
if you need that wrestling talk outlet, definitely we'd love to have you on. We've been toying with some, like, just not just reviewing wrestling, but talking wrestling. Have some guests on, but also just really just talking about different things. Like one of the things we're talking about is what are the best entrance themes, like what are our top 5 entrance theme songs that we like, or different, like talk about different kind of matches and storylines and fantasy booking, you know, that armchair booking. Like this is how I would book Brandon Cutler for the
yeah. Oh yeah, I'd have to introduce the song that I had not this past Christmas, last one before, where I was able to successfully commission Mikey Ruckus to write Swank his own wrestling theme song.
Yo, that's awesome.
It exists. I will send you the link after this so you can hear it, and it is a banger, which is like the coolest thing. Oh, I also got Cultaholic to do a video about him too. That was like I'll never top that ever. It was the best Christmas ever.
Shout out to Mikey Ruckus and Cultaholic, And I
Yeah.
got to put a Matty Irish Edits too shout out because that dude does great edits. I've commissioned him to do some edits, but definitely Mikey Ruckus, he is
He
the
is the
man.
man. Like I didn't think he would be able to have time to work with me, and he did, and it was just the coolest thing. Nice guy too. Really,
He
just down to earth, family man.
he's admitted too. He's another person that deals with ADHD.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's and then again that hyper focus, and I seen some of his tweets where he talks about it. He talks
Hmm.
about how
Yeah.
and I could see that again, that creativity, him being hyper focused. Okay, I got to make a theme song about Kyrie Sane, or I got to make a theme song about this. Have,
And now he's turning them into symphonies so that bands can play them, like high school bands, college bands. And I'm just
yep.
like, could you imagine getting like being in high school band? Like, okay, we're gonna play All About the Boom, like, or well, I don't know if he would. Kenny Omega's song was Little V, so that wasn't him. But like, um, but any of the really cool songs that he has written through the years, I mean, I would love that. Like, here comes Nyla Rose's music.
Right?
You know?
Peace bomb. And of course, but you got to get Taz to sing it with you. You got to
Oh,
get
of course,
Taz.
of course.
Here
I
comes
love
Nyla
Taz.
Rose. She's a beast and she's a rose.
What? I like the song. What? I like to sing along.
uh, how great are Taz and Excalibur on Dark for commentary?
Oh, pops. I love how they don't censor them or how they don't edit it. They just let them do their thing, and it just works. They're so funny.
Do you,
Half of them make Botchamania.
yeah, exactly. And do you think though, like, because some people complain, like the casual fan, some doesn't watch Dark or Dark Elevation, but I feel like folks are missing out by not
Mm,
at least checking it out. I mean, it's on YouTube. It's a common platform. And if there's a match that you're just not into, just fast forward. Just skip
right?
to the next one. But
But that's where like Sky Blue got real. That's how she got her record. And I actually had no idea she wasn't signed, and till she just was. I thought she had been. But there's so many great wrestlers there, and a lot of the people that you want to see are wrestling there.
yeah,
It's not like a separate brand. It's just another show that they do.
they're getting their reps. Like, look how far Julia Hart has come.
Oh my
And
gosh, yeah.
and she wrestled on TV for the first time in a long time. She's been on TV for a lot with the House of Black, but she wrestled on TV for the first time in a long time. But on Dark and Dark Elevation, she's been putting the reps almost every week,
Mm-hmm.
and she's come so far in that. And I think that's what happens a lot of times. People complain like, oh, they disappeared and on their like they're on Dark, like that's a bad thing. I'm like, it's only a bad thing if you don't watch it,
Right.
and
And
you're only hurting yourself.
I have to ask a question because I haven't been able to ask this of another fan yet, but Jake Hager's hat, MJF recently wore a hat. Okay, Julia Hart's hat. Her hat is cool, but okay, my first thought with Jake Hager was, what bet keeps going around that people are losing backstage?
Yeah, they have to wear
I can't understand where all these hats coming from. It's really funny because they're all very unique hats.
Either Tony Khan's got to deal with a haberdashery, or
That could be.
that could be. But I think that it's probably, or could be, a running joke. I do think that the Hager thing, because if you remember, that hat was originally supposed to be for Daniel Garcia.
Yes, and he was like, no.
Yeah, he
No.
didn't want it at all. But then in fact, I think that came from the Kanga. Was it the Kanga hats or something? And then they gave him the bucket hat. But then then Hager did it. But see, Hager got over to the point where now you see like the Hager hat section. You see like people.
I've seen people wearing them in the crowd. Yeah.
It's fantastic. It's just like they'll like Jericho will interview. Well, they'll be interview the JAS, and then they'll go to Hager. And goes, I like this hat, and then you can almost see like Jericho almost like cracking up.
It is hilarious. Yeah.
I think
it's so funny.
And I think it's kind of like, in some cases maybe they're like, well, hey, Hager got that over. Now I'm gonna do a gimmick with my hat or something. Like, hey, don't touch my hat.
But just watch, pretty soon, people who don't watch wrestling are going to be wearing these hats. It's going to
Yep.
happen,
Yep. Exactly.
Trendsetters.
Well, that's the mid thing blows my mind because when MJF did his mid promo, yeah, he did that. That went on TikTok, and then people were sharing that, but then people were doing their own variations. It blew up on TikTok to the point where so many people didn't know it came from MJF.
That's amazing.
And here's what was the revelation was: I'm teaching fourth graders, and one of the kids were talking about something, and the girl says, "That's so mid." And I looked at it. Of course, my first reaction is, "Another wrestling fan? Oh, finally!" And I'm like, "Oh, hey, let's stop." And it turns out she had no idea it came from wrestling. So
That's so funny.
I had to dig up the video and show her that this is where it came from. But there's so many people saying that's mid, and it's so cool that it became part of pop culture.
Oh, that dude, he's the next Jericho when it comes to trend setting. He just blows my mind. Blows my mind. We got to see him in Buffalo when he had just come back. It was right after the Bucks and Kenny got suspended, so we were really mad because we were like, Kenny just came back. We're finally going to get to see him. We were at the Kenny No Ball show previously in Rochester a year before, but he didn't wrestle a match. Yeah. So we were really, really bummed about that. But yeah, it was an interesting show that night. Well, it was so fun.
I do want to steer this back to mental health.
Yes,
but
yes.
I'll take the banner off, but just that a good segue would be, how has wrestling helped, like as a source of joy or a source of, as a source of like focus or helping spark creativity or just in general, how has wrestling, whether just AEW or wrestling in general, how has that fandom helped you as a person or with your mental health or in general?
I find that I really enjoy the athleticism first and foremost. It is so pleasing visually, and the storytelling is great, and I can really escape into it. And it's also so ridiculous. And that's one thing a lot of people don't understand about wrestling fans. We know that it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun. And it makes me feel, I think, if you threw together a great AEW show, which is most of them, that's kind of like the inside of my brain. Mm-hmm. All these flippy things going on and these stories, this thing over here, that thing over there. And it is, the pace of the show moves at a good enough speed for me that I can stay engaged for 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And it's really nice, too, because Swank and I like to spend that time together, too. And it's also inspired some of my content. When Kenny Omega was getting ready to come back, I was running around town screaming Kenny Omega. And there's a video of it there somewhere. I'll have to pull that up for you.
Yeah, do you is that the one where you're kind of like the interviewer on the street? Like, did you know that Kenny Omega's coming back? And some people are like, yeah, so who? Or
only Swank, he was in that, but nobody else was in that one because there's no one around. But I totally would go up to people and ask them that.
That would be funny. That would be like a funny thing, is to go around town and just interview random people and just what do you think about the Elite? Or should CM Punk return? Or what do you think about this? And then just see what their reaction is. Like, well, I think, if or the surprise is somebody goes, actually, I think that Tony Khan is that. You might find that one person that was into it. Oh, that's really cool. And I think it's when it goes back to what you love, embrace what you love, and embrace whatever brings you joy can't be a bad thing.
Yeah. Yep. And we did a couple of Halloweens ago, we did a BTE parody, and I actually like to do a Matt Jackson I'll do a beard and stuff, and I like playing him, and I in the future might do some more. I could do Soraya now that she's here, and it does inspire me in a lot of ways. If I'm trying to think of something to do, because I always have to be creating something, wrestling's a great place to go because there's so much you can just imitate, or sometimes I just put filters on their faces and that's what the content is, and it's pretty funny. So definitely helps me, and that means I'm not bored, which means I'm pretty content usually.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well,
yeah.
I'd like to bring you back when we do start up this wrestling podcast, and I'd like to bring you back and check in with you again for a minute.
Yeah, I would love to.
But Kitty, we have been over an hour, but it flew by for me. I hope it flew by for you. But
oh yeah, I could talk and talk and talk and talk.
We could go another hour, but this has been fantastic. Or as RJ City would say, this has been a romp. This has been a real trance around the entire garden of mental health, and I feel like a stuffed up with pollen of good feelings.
I love him. He had the ESW title. That was our indie title for quite a while. Mm-hmm. Some love for RJ.
RJ, yes.
So funny.
The master of the Hammerlock.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Hey EW. I think that's great that he's doing that, so that he's involved. And that was a good impression. I like that.
Well, working on it. I will try. I got to get his pose too. Whenever he takes a picture, he always does like the real estate pose.
Yeah.
The turn and the back. Well, Kitty, this has been fantastic.
Thank you for having me.
Let's bring you back very soon to talk more. But I feel like a lot of what we covered, hopefully it's been helpful. I'm sure it has. And let's make sure you check out Kitty Famtastic on Instagram and the YouTubes. I'll put the socials right here.
You.
Instagram. You're Kitty Famtastic on Instagram, right?
Yep. And on Facebook too. I'm working on starting up an actual page there, but I do have a lot of content there that's public. So
awesome. Well, follow all the socials, like, subscribe, comment. You will enjoy her videos. They're great for a laugh. The real short ones are just you'll crack up. And if you're a wrestling fan, you'll like the wrestling theme ones. But even if you're not a wrestling fan, there's some really great ones. And I just got to warn you, when you tune into the Giancarlo Esposito Magneto song, it'll be stuck in your head.
Giancarlo Esposito Magneto.
Giancarlo Esposito
Magneto X. Yeah, that was a fun one.
Well, this has been another edition of Mental Health Mondays for Kitty Fam. I have been Mind Runner. Have a great week. Any final thoughts or any final advice for everybody out there, Kitty?
Just remember, no matter what you are struggling with, you're not alone, and there is always help out there. And hopefully we can help you too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you.
Catch new episodes of Mental Health Mondays every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Start your week off with a smile and some inspiration.